everybody. Welcome to the live. I'm doing something a little special, I think. I just kind of wanted to let everybody know I'm not going to be around tomorrow or until July 22nd. I'm taking a little vacation. So I just thought I kind of would let everybody know. We're going to do a little video, a fun little video, talk about the Baltimore Colts. So this going to show some small things. I'll have to talk about it throughout the video. This is just a spare of a moment kind of thing I thought people would like to watch. But also I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it was interesting hearing this story. So let me get a couple of things set up here. Story. So let me get a couple of things set up here, and then we'll get busy. So, how are you, Nathan? Let's get started. Let's go share screen. We're gonna watch this little news.
I remember it was one of the worst nights of our history, and this is the 27th anniversary of the Baltimore Colts walking out on us. 9,855 nights ago, and it still makes us sick.
I think it's totally despicable.
Scott Garceau chased Robert Ursay down at the airport in January of 1984.
Today D-Day, Bob?
Today D-Day for what?
Decision?
No decisions.
No decision?
What are you telling them?
Just information today?
No information.
Before our microphones, Robert Ursay told
This
us he
is
was
so
not moving the
interesting.
blankety-blank team.
I have not any intention of moving the team. If I did, I would tell you about it, okay?
But we knew he had a wandering eye. We chased him to Phoenix, Jacksonville, Memphis.
If you love the Colts, why don't you treat me right?
But we found his lawyer in Indianapolis, Michael Chernoff.
The funny thing is
there's
about
so much
this.
secrecy about all of this. Why can't you comment?
No comment.
In Indianapolis earlier today.
No comment.
The funny thing about this whole thing is the Tennessee Titans did the same thing. They backed up a whole bunch of the moving trucks in the middle of the night and left and came to Nashville. That's also the funny part. There's another YouTube video out about that. The Colts, the Titans did the Colts, and then the Titans did it a couple of years later. Just thought it was kind of funny. Let's get back into this a little bit.
You can't tell us why you're here?
No comment.
Ursay wanted us to pay for preseason games, 1:00 starts, improvements to Memorial Stadium. The legislature was about to use eminent domain to seize the club, so Ursay had to make a move.
I just can't believe this is happening.
Mayor Schaefer from his front steps of his home.
The Colts had to sneak out of town at night. It degrades a great tradition of the city in football.
The legendary late newsman, John Stedman, who saw every Colts game home and away.
And I doubt if Robert Ursay realizes tonight the full impact or the extent of his sin in pulling away a football team that was a big part of the fiber of Baltimore.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
One of the greatest fans of all time, Loudy.
We've got 27 years involved at Corrals with this ball club, so why should we stop? We'll be here when the new Colts come in.
The Baltimore Ravens came to town, and the only
This
way
is
to
the
erase a memory
funniest
like
thing.
tonight is to win the next Super Bowl in Indianapolis.
You all right? I was just saying, it's a tough trip for you back there.
All right, guys, that is that one. Now we're gonna watch. There's another little video on it. Moved overnight. This is 5 minutes, but we're gonna do one more here. We're just going to the Colts late moving over 40 years ago. This is a 2-minute clip. We're going to watch this. this is going to be all over the board. You know, I think it's kind of interesting. It's not going to be too long a video, but I thought everybody would enjoy this.
Gentlemen, it's my understanding that the Colts are on their way to Indianapolis.
With an ear-to-ear grin, Indianapolis Mayor William Hudnut made that announcement to the media on March 29th, 1984. But the process to land an NFL franchise began much earlier.
If we could generate the kind of enthusiasm and commitment in the private sector that could underwrite this project, I think it'd be great for our city and would help us become a major league city.
The city of Indianapolis bet big on building a domed stadium in the hopes of landing an NFL expansion team. After years of planning, the 61,000-seat Hoosier Dome began to take shape in the summer of 1982. While things were looking up in the Circle City, it was a different story at Baltimore Memorial Stadium. Attendance was down, the facility was in disrepair, and the team's owner, Bob Irsay, looking for a change. Speculation over the team's future reached a fevered pitch in 1984.
Today, D-Day, Bob?
Today, D-Day for what?
Decision?
No decisions.
No decision
Okay,
yet?
tell 'em that.
Just information today?
No information. I have not any intention to move the team. If I did, I would tell you about it, okay?
But Irsay's words did not match his actions. He made several visits to cities across the country, including Indianapolis, where he saw the Hoosier Dome firsthand.
He was quite smitten by the fact that even though it hadn't been finished yet, the seats were blue and white, which were the Colts colors. How you doing?
And 40 years ago this week, the team rolled into Indianapolis, taking over the then vacant Fall Creek Middle School. Reaction from both cities was
Crazy.
I think we'll probably develop
This
a
is
new Hoosier
just
football player,
nuts.
just dribbling the ball down the carpet in some way, shape, or form.
All the things
This
the
was
Colts did, and all the
unreal.
wonderful memories they've given to Baltimore and to the football world. We're here long before Mr. Irsay came on the scene. And I don't think it's fair for him to try and take our memories along with our team.
I asked Mayor Hudnut if he would send us our memorabilia back, and I'm going to try to get him to not to run the name Indianapolis Colts. There's something obnoxious about the name. I'm sorry that Baltimore is brokenhearted this afternoon. I'm grateful that Indianapolis can rejoice. I think in the long run, this is going to be a wonderful thing for our city, and that we're going to be a magnificent NFL team.
Brad Brown, WRTV Sports.
Thought that one was interesting. All right.
For over 30 years, the Colts football team called Baltimore home. So what exactly happened to make them suddenly decide to pack up and leave in the middle of the night? In today's video, we'll take a look back at how one owner's quest for a new stadium and the fight that ensued led to one of the most infamous moves in NFL history.
All right. Just
Before
a minute,
we get
guys, we're going to stop.
hitting that notification bell if you don't want to miss any of those.
All right, guys. That was really interesting. There's more that we're going to watch here in just a second. Let me,
Gentlemen, it's
there's a couple of good videos out here. The story about packing up things and crazy. Saturday makes 30 years. Pretty cool stadium. I've been there a couple of times. Really, really cool. You know, look, December 17th, 1995, new report the Browns were leaving. Also, they packed up in the middle of the night. I forgot about that. They did that. They just packed up in the middle of the night also. And this stuff was really interesting. It got me to thinking, you know what? I'll just do a live on this for a little bit. It's a good little thing to do here, and I thought everybody would enjoy it. Let's see. Colts moved to Indianapolis. We're gonna. Here we go. Indiana will never be the same.
blacks over here, whites over here, and this kind of thing. And
No, wrong thing. I didn't want that. But why don't we,
Since the end of the 2000 season, 2 NFL landmarks have become lost treasures. Memorial Stadium in Baltimore and Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh were both demolished. And when those 2 ballparks went down, 66 years of football history
pretty
went down
dang
with them.
interesting.
It made me think of that Frank Sinatra song, There Used to Be a Ballpark. I know the song's about baseball, but really it's about the emotional connection of a town and its team, whatever the sport. At the heart of that connection is the ballpark. And I can't think of many places where the heart beats stronger or louder than Three Rivers Stadium and Memorial Stadium. They called Memorial Stadium the world's largest outdoor insane asylum. It was an old-fashioned ballpark where the fans were close to the action, and that feeling of closeness carried over to the players.
Baltimore Memorial Stadium. Yeah, that was a homey kind of place. People seemed to enjoy going to the games, and they had their old friends and they talked. And it was like a college atmosphere.
Hey, program here, championship.
At Memorial Stadium, even the vendors dressed in team colors. I'd never.
So, pretty interesting about that. Yeah, we're all over the board, but it's just a fun little video I'm doing tonight. So, you know, something that we could look up, and I think it would be really cool. Let's look up.
I remember
why we're looking this up. Let's do this. Here we go, guys. We are going to watch this. This is going to be really, really interesting. A little bit about the Tennessee Titans, known as the Houston Oilers. This is not too long, so we'll...
The Houston Oilers were a founding member of the American Football League, a rival to the NFL. The team would become an iconic part of sports culture in Houston. So what exactly led to the team leaving the city that they called home for 36 years? In today's video, we'll look back at how one man's obsession with wanting to build a new stadium led to in the early 1900s of the year. The Oilers finished the 1980 season 11-4 to an overtime field goal by Oilers kicker Tony Zendejas. In the next game, however, the Oilers would lose to the Denver Broncos 34-10.
Let's see if maybe there's a better video. I know there is.
Texas, the place many consider to be the most die-hard football state in the country. High school teams have college stadiums, and everyone is watching football all weekend. So why would a football team ever leave the bastion of football? The Houston Oilers played in Houston from 1960 to 1997 and decided to up and relocate to become the Tennessee Titans at the end of their run. But why exactly did the Oilers choose to leave Houston? I'm Jake with Football Lore, and today we'll be exploring just why the Oilers left the Houston area. In order order to get a better understanding of the Oilers' history, we need to go back to their origin. The team got its start as a charter member of the AFL. The AFL was a startup rival to the NFL at the time, and the Oilers were owned by Bud Adams, who had made his wealth in the oil fields by Houston. He had made several bids to try to acquire an NFL team that didn't go through. So when he had a chance to be one of the original 8 owners in the AFL, he jumped on the opportunity. Throughout the 60s, they were pretty popular in the Houston area, and also had been one of the few teams to be able to steal talent from the NFL with their drafts. They were paying high salaries and helped that make things more competitive with the NFL. They were able to make the first 3 straight AFL championship games and even won the first 2 AFL championships against the Chargers both times. They were so prolific, they became the first AFL team to sign an active NFL player when they signed Willard Duville from the Bears. The Oilers had huge popularity in Houston, and in 1967, they became the first ever football team to play inside a domed stadium when they played in the Astrodome. Once the NFL-AFL merger became official, the Oilers found themselves sinking to the bottom of the standings at the end of every season. This drop in performance did not help them gain popularity in the city of Houston at the time. The early 70s was awful, but the late 70s saw them appear in an AFC championship game and had Earl Campbell on their roster, which was a huge draw with the local Houston crowds. They had back-to-back AFC championship appearances, and while they lost both times, competing for a Super Bowl did wonders for the franchise's value. They were even able to pack the Astrodome for rallies at the end of the season, which meant their fan support was able to sell out a stadium even when they weren't playing a game. While the owner of the team didn't really need the NFL money because he was independently wealthy, anyone would want a few extra $1 million to throw around. Plus, it was cool to be turned into somewhat of a celebrity for owning the team. The 80s was another solid decade for the Oilers, and it saw legends like Warren Moon grace the field for the team. They still had solid support, but in 1987, Adams threatened to move the team to Jacksonville unless the Astrodome was brought up to date to match other NFL stadiums. The Astrodome had become one of the smallest venues in the NFL, and it did need desperate improvements to its structure. The city did not want to lose the Oilers and invested $67 million into renovations to bring it up to Bud Adams standards. The city really did not want the Oilers to relocate, and while usually negotiations are tense, they did acquiesce to the demands of the team pretty quickly. They didn't want to risk ending up like Baltimore without an NFL franchise.
Pretty interesting right now. This is really, really interesting. Really an interesting kind of thing. I just figured, very interesting kind of football history. Decided to get away from playing some Madden. I'm uploading right now college football, so hopefully I'll be playing some on this channel soon. But let's get back to the video.
This renovation added 10,000 seats, AstroTurf, and 65 luxury boxes. These were funded by increased property taxes and hotel taxes, alongside bonds that would be repaid over 30 years. Bud Adams demanding to use taxpayer funds to pay for these renovations didn't sit well with many in Houston, and it was the beginning of the end when it came to relations between the city and the team. I mean, think about it. You live in Houston in a house, and your property taxes go up $1,000 a year to help pay for a rich man's stadium improvements. Obviously, that isn't going to go over well when you're struggling to make it paycheck to paycheck while he wants to buy another yacht. It was very unpopular amongst the population of Houston as a whole, understandably. The 90s did see continued solid play on the field from the franchise, and in 1993, they had a 12-4 record, which was the best the team had ever done in Texas. This season was not the smoothest, and at one point, the offensive and defensive coordinators literally got into a brawl during the middle of a game. However, in that offseason, they traded Warren Moon to the Vikings, and this totally crippled the ability of the team to perform in any capacity. They went 2-14 the next season, and with their high draft pick, took Steve McNair to replace Moon at quarterback. While all of this was happening on the field, tensions were ramping up off the field. The city of Houston and Adams had a tense relationship since the demand for improvements years ago, but now it was something different. Adams once again came to the city and asked this time for a new stadium. The improvements had been nice, but really a new stadium would be much better for the team and himself. He proposed a brand new facility and even was willing to contribute 25% of the total cost of the project from his personal bank account. He also
we're going to stop it here for this a minute. I sure do miss the old Astrodome. I know it's still there. I know they're working on something. I was going to do a video on that sometime in the near future. I'm going to do a video on that. But one of my favorite kind of stadiums was the Houston Astrodome. You know, a really cool place.
was willing to use this venue as something that could be converted to a domed NBA stadium for the Houston Rockets alongside a venue for the football team. The mayor at first was very supportive of the idea and thought it would be a great way to revitalize downtown and boost traffic to local businesses. Games would bring crowds downtown that would spend at bars and restaurants before and after. However, the mayor knew it was going to be unpopular when it came to a vote and refused to announce his public support for the project, even though the population of Houston really did not want to lose the Oilers. The tax raises previously had been very unpopular, and few wanted a more severe hike to pay for a new stadium, especially because those investments had been so recent. Few understood why they would commit to build a new stadium so shortly after they had just spent tens of millions on their current home. This was an understandable position from the people of Houston, but as we know, NFL owners hate being told no when it comes to a new stadium. Almost every other relocation spurs from a similar discussion of them wanting a new stadium without needing to foot the bill. Adams felt the lack of public support alongside the oil crash of the 80s that decimated the Houston economy meant it was very unlikely for him to get the stadium he wanted. He started to shop the Oilers to other markets to see what offers could come back. Several cities had applied to become the home of the team, but he was most interested in the market of Nashville, which loved football but did not currently have a team representing them. This, alongside it being a quickly growing city, made it interesting to Adams, and he began secret negotiations with the mayor to discuss the terms of a potential relocation. The city promised to give Adams $144 million towards a new stadium and $70 million in ticket revenue. This was much better than the lack of an offer he had gotten from Houston. From a purely business perspective, it made more sense for him to move the team, so he did. After the negotiations were finalized, he announced he was going to be moving the team at the end of the next season, and as a result, almost all support for the Oilers in Houston dried up instantly. The 1996 season was a disaster from a fan support perspective, with most games not even selling to 50% capacity as a result of the move. The city of Houston felt betrayed after they had caved to the demands of the owner the first time, just to have him still move the team years later. They felt as though their loyal support had meant absolutely nothing to the ownership, and since they were so passionate about football, they were also upset they would be losing their representation in the NFL. However, they weren't going to bend over to the whims of one rich man who wanted to dictate the spending of the city. Their final game attracted a crowd of just 15,000 people, and it was the smallest crowd the franchise had ever drawn in its entire stay in Houston. They ended up moving shortly after this to their new stadium in Nashville. Nissan Stadium at the time was a brand new facility just by downtown Nashville. They had immediate success in Tennessee with an appearance in Super Bowl 34 under the guidance of Steve McNair. While this success was sweet, it was short-lived before they went on to have a pretty mediocre existence in the years since. While Nashville was obviously thrilled to have an NFL team and has shown a lot of support, it did leave a big hole in the state of Texas. They are one of the most populated states, and only having one team was crazy from a market perspective. The Oilers ended up moving mainly because their demands for a new stadium were not met. I will say, while Adams was only willing to put up 25% of the cost, most owners aren't willing to put any of their own money into the project. I understand why the city of Houston was apprehensive, and I understand why they weren't willing to have their taxes raised just to pay for a new stadium shortly after improvements. However, the second they said no to this, it was in Adams' best interest to relocate the team to a new location willing to build him a new state-of-the-art stadium. The The Oilers had a lot of history, and it does suck they lost it, but the Texans at this point are as good as the Oilers ever were. The state of Texas at this point had just one NFL team, and the city was clamoring for another chance to have an NFL team. Houston is an absolutely massive market, and while the Cowboys are huge, the NFL knew it was important to have a team in the market. In 1999, Robert McNair was sold a franchise in the Houston area for $1 billion. He had made his wealth in the oil business the way most of the super wealthy in Houston have, and went on to open a private investment fund that was doing incredibly well at the time of his purchase. The team would begin playing in the 2002 year in their brand new stadium. This is pretty amusing considering they refused to pay for it if it was going to be owned by Bud Adams. The city of Houston rallied to afford the new NRG Stadium in Houston, located next door to the Astrodome. This new stadium was state-of-the-art at the time. In 2002, it cost $352 million to build and has a seating capacity of almost 75,000. It was actually the first NFL facility to have a retractable roof and has hosted the Super Bowl twice. They purposely wanted to design a stadium that pushed the limits at the time, and they got a product that certainly still looks pretty modern, even though it is over 20 years old at the time of this recording. It has had one set of modernizations in 2015, but will probably be the home of the Texans for years to come. It did take quite a long time for the Texans to figure it out. While the beginning of their franchise was incredibly rough, they did have several great seasons with Matt Schaub, before having a bright spurt with Deshaun Watson, and now a very promising future with CJ Stroud. The city of Houston is way too passionate about football to not have a team, and I don't think there are any markets worth relocating to other than Houston that don't already have an NFL team. Thankfully, the Texans are safe in the city of Houston, especially because they're willing to spend on stadium renovations, and that is the most important to keeping your team in your city. They are the youngest franchise in the NFL, so they might need a bit more time to work out the kinks. But overall, I think they are well on their way to actually competing for Super Bowls on a regular basis. The Texans are also now the 11th most valuable team in the NFL, which is impressive considering how much younger they are than most of the teams in the league. That is why the Houston Oilers relocated, because they wouldn't build a new stadium when asked by the owner. That is how it usually shakes out in these situations, unfortunately. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to press the like button and comment down below. We post 2 videos like this a week.
Pretty interesting on that, guys, huh? You know?
And would love...
Like I said, I thought that was really, really interesting, and pretty it's pretty thing to see. Homecoming 1980, Houston's #1. Dan 1, the Houston Oilers, 1993. So, anyway, that's interesting. And now called the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, I just thought it'd be... Just thought you guys would enjoy it instead of playing some Madden football tonight. So I just thought I would spring this live up for a little, you know. So this is interesting here.
To say that the Oilers' arrival in Tennessee was turbulent would be an understatement. Many of the same doubts laid at the Chargers' feet were placed upon the squad. A team without a true home. The oil crisis of years past will continue on in this new age and set a perilous course with an uncertain future.
Warren Moon hit by Thomas again, and Kansas City takes over on downs. Another punishment.
Welcome to Houston, the year 1995. The Oilers are a hollow shell of their former glory. Years of playoff ineptitude and off-field drama have left the city fatigued and apathetic. The great stars of years past are either fading with age or gone. The contending window had slammed shut. The team had bottomed out with an unforgiving thud. Even with fresh talents like Steve McNair in tow, Houston couldn't shake the stench of previous failures. And now everything was starting to come to a head. Bud Adams sits in an executive suite stewing. The Astrodome was becoming extremely antiquated. Trying to renovate it in the late 1980s was unsuccessful. The stadium turf was extremely unsafe and dilapidated. A preseason game against the Chargers in 1995 was canceled due to it. The Soulless Cavern wasn't an ideal place to come for events, and the lack of even passable amenities left a burning desire in his empty heart. It was empty because he had to pay exorbitant rent to Drayton McLean and the Astros to play there. He would ponder his actions, but one move created a spark. The Rams' exodus from Los Angeles. By bringing the team to St. Louis, the city offered Georgia Frontier the right to walk all over them in high heels. Guaranteed revenues in the tens of millions from season ticket sales and personal seat licenses. An extremely team-friendly lease of a brand new dome with all the fixins. He wanted that. No matter where it would take him, he yearned for such a deal. In Houston, Adams would prefer it, but a few things undid them. Years of failure and turmoil created deadly levels of apathy within the Oilers fan base. Bud, being the shrewd businessman, began the campaign right after gutting the franchise, facing the team undergoing a 2-14 collapse in 1994. Excellent timing. If I would say the name Bud Adams in the city of Houston, there would be some choice words about him. Affectionate words like asshole, worthless snake, incompetent, and motherfucker. They probably still hadn't forgiven him for firing Bum Phillips 15 years ago. He was poison, and anyone who allied with him suffered a perilous fate. The local populace and government still remember him strong-arming the city for upgrades to the Astrodome less than 10 years ago. I don't think threatening to move the team to Jacksonville is going to work this time. The city's recession due to a depressed oil industry and still paying off the renovation debts would emphasize that. Awful convenient how Houston's mayor Bob Lanier was seeking re-election soon. What better way to gain popularity in the polls than by shitting on Bud Adams? It's not like Adams wanted an incredibly lopsided deal from the city, just a slight one. Bud would pay $75 million of an estimated $235 million stadium. Better for Houston, it would be multi-purpose, serving the Astros, Rockets, and a potential NHL team. Reconfigurable from top to bottom. A premier destination for all the hottest concerts. It would have been nice if he told the other owners of his plan. Les Alexander hated the idea of sharing team facilities and balked at the proposal immediately. But Adams could have used some political capital here. Too bad he burned it all in the early game. The stadium deal was dead before anything even came to fruition. Bud had no choice. He had to whore his team out to other cities. As mayor of Nashville, Phil Bredesen wanted to bring his city more prestige. They were growing rapidly but lacked legitimacy. You know what brings that? A professional sports franchise. They had built a new arena and nearly wooed the New Jersey Devils over. The time was now to strike. It was a match rivaling one on Tinder. Adams wanted a showing of affection. Bring me money and I will come. In which way I'll leave to the beholder. Bredesen immediately put a proposal to the Nashville populace to raise $80 million in public bonds to help fund the construction of a new football stadium. The referendum passed 59-41. Bud Adams would get exclusive negotiating rights with the country music hotbed. And he made out like a bandit. Paul Tagliabue tried pleading with Adams to stay in Houston, but there would be no reconsideration. In 1995, NFL owners approved the move. The Oilers were leaving Houston. It was the final stab in the back for the city. After years of meddling, choking, and self-destruction, Bud Adams was committing the final betrayal. Even then, the city wouldn't release the Oilers from their lease. They were stuck there for 2 more seasons. So what would you expect to happen when a team is fucking off and the fan base already is at alarming levels of apathy? Well, they simply stopped giving a fuck. Attendance figures for home games in 1996 plummeted to the lowest levels the league had seen in decades. In most games, the Astrodome wouldn't even be a third full. Their home opener only brought in 27,725 people. If even that. Local coverage fell to a trickle. Games were regionally blacked out on television. The Oilers were so popular on the radio that they were interrupted for Houston Rockets preseason games. I should correct myself. The pregame to the preseason games. The only matchups that generated any sort of attendance were against the Steelers, Dolphins, and 49ers, some of the better teams in the league at the time. And it wasn't like they were terrible. They were mediocre, but they had just drafted Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George. There were reasons to watch this team, but it felt as if Houston relished in Bud Adams failing. What should have been a bitter send-off was barely even acknowledged. After barely surpassing 20,000 tickets sold against Carolina and Jacksonville, the fans mutually gave the Oilers the middle finger on the way out of the season. The final attendance numbers against the Bengals, 15,131. A total that wouldn't even sell out the Summit. The city was livid, and were almost celebratory in the owner's demise. Enjoy hell, bud. Bye. Don't let your ass hit the door on the way out, you worthless fuck. Bud Adams would become the ultimate villain in Houston. The man that killed football in their city every chance he got. Nobody shed any tears. Nobody wanted to deal with another year of this insanity. The city of Houston allowed Adams to pay a penalty and he would be free of his lease. The Oilers were officially out of Texas. But don't let that fool you into thinking this is over. The turbulence is only beginning for them. As Bud Adams and his Oilers were leaving Houston, he left many pissed in his wake. But this was a new era, a clean slate. His new domain, a shrine worthy of the glories of pigskin. In 2 years. As the move was premature, Bud needed his Oilers to find a temporary home to foster a relationship with his new city. At the time, the only stadium that came anywhere close to NFL caliber in Nashville was Vanderbilt Stadium. This venue was unacceptable to Bud. 3 problems were deal breakers to him. It only seated 41,000 people. Not enough for a top-flight franchise. The stadium lacked skyboxes. No luxury suite revenue. No schmoozing with local corporations. To top it off, Vanderbilt didn't allow the sale of alcoholic beverages on stadium grounds. Even less profit to be made. Nashville was off the table. But where could he go? You could try Neyland Stadium, home of the Volunteers in Knoxville. It's bigger than Vanderbilt. Over double its size. You know what? With a 3-hour drive, there's no way they're selling enough tickets to prevent local blackouts. They're out too. After searching for a moment, finally, an oasis in a desert of non-NFL stadiums. Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium. Over 60,000 seats to fill. An eager audience. Skyboxes. This is a perfect place to call home for the next 2 years.
And
the only downside,
people
it's
didn't
in
want to
Memphis,
drive to
on
it.
the other side of the goddamn state. A 3.5-hour drive.
People didn't want to drive. That's why they were trying to push it and leave it, let them play at Vanderbilt. But, you know, the owner was stickler.
From Nashville. Better yet, there was major construction taking place on I-40. So add up to 90 minutes on that drive. But that would be the least of their issues. In his wisdom, Bud Adams completely failed to read the room. The city of Memphis had been desperately trying to secure their own NFL team for the past 2 decades. They had a passionate fan base, but were routinely stymied by the Shield. Their World Football League franchise's attempted invasion in the mid-'70s was smacked down in legal courts. They were one of the finalists for an expansion franchise in 1993, but they lost out in the final round of voting. And now this is their consolation prize? Some fly-by-night operation that's going to be gone in a few years? And worse to their big brother on the other part of the state? Why the fuck would Memphians support this? Do they not realize the massive rivalry between Memphis and Nashville? It gets more tone-deaf, too. Bud Adams said that he would consider changing the name of the team to something more fitting of Tennessee, but he had decided to cling on to tradition and keep them the Oilers. I wish I could say that's it, but it gets worse. Doubling down on his greatness, he wished for the city to start a season ticket drive to prove they were worthy of his team's presence. Even better, he all but demanded the city of Memphis pay for his team's travel expenses to their city. Yes, the team itself would have their offices and players practice in Nashville. The team would be playing 32 away games. After mass backlash, the Oilers backed off that stipulation. But Bud Adams was eager to get tithes from what he called Memphanites, merely unwashed masses that needed conversion to the Oiler Lord. Amen. If Bud thought the people of Houston were cold to him in 1996, Memphians were absolute zero. The 1997 Tennessee Oilers took the attendance lows of last year's team and took them even lower, to figures not seen in the NFL since the 1950s. No one gave a fuck. Memphians didn't care if it wasn't theirs. Nashvillians balked at the long trek across state. If they were lucky, some opposing fans showed up. A near-empty stadium was the backdrop for the Oilers' every home game. Their home opener in Memphis was expected to hold 50 to 55,000 people. They barely cracked 30. The next 2 games, I wouldn't look for hope there. Holy You wanted to hear about the season ticket drive to prove Memphians were worthy of the Oilers? Are you a glutton for punishment? And that's just the beginning of the fun. Imagine you being in the shoes of a fan. You sit for ages in a traffic jam to get to the stadium, then wait in line even longer for the one ticket booth they have open. As you pay the ridiculously exorbitant ticket prices, you enter the lifeless, dilapidated stadium to see a ripped, discolored playing field and a scoreboard where its main feature is heavy rust. One end zone says Oilers, the other Tigers. Maybe you live in Jackson, Tennessee, an hour east of Memphis. Some Oilers players are coming for a press conference. And they just sit there awkwardly in near 100-degree heat, saying nothing. A staring contest for the ages. The team itself tried to parade down Beale Street in Memphis one day. Nobody came. Ground swelling of support. But what about the team itself? Let's put it this way. In the summer of 1997, the Oilers were still holding their mini camps in Houston. They didn't actually move to Tennessee until nearly the start of training camp. Their home offices in Nashville were a bunch of rickety brown trailers. The special teams units had to push portable goalposts onto the field just to practice kicks. The Oilers didn't even bother trying to market the team to Nashville. They spent more time trying to plead with Memphians to show up. It's a miracle that the Oilers of 97 were just mediocre instead of totally god-awful considering the circumstances. And even after all of this, the terrible attendance figures, the constant travel, the disastrous PR stunts, Bud Adams was willing to suffer through another year of this. They had one more game to play against the Steelers at home in 97, and it was easily their best showing in terms of attendance. Over 50,000 strong rushed to see this game. Good on the surface, but look around and one thing becomes very, very apparent.
Mostly Steeler fans.
The stadium was infested with Steelers fans. Some say over 4/5 of it rooted for the black and gold. It was a spectacular embarrassment for the franchise and the NFL itself. The Memphis experiment had proven to be an unmitigated disaster. It was so humiliating that Bud Adams had to run back to Nashville with his tail between his legs. Bud's dubbed Memphinites celebrated his failure. The sheer horror. Will the Oilers ever find salvation? Maybe playing in their damn home city could be a start. 1997 was a year of catastrophe for the Oilers, and it was their own goddamn fault. Bud Adams foolishly thought his team could play anywhere temporarily, and it blew up in his face. He would return to Nashville, not as a conqueror, but a dejected man. He must play in a skybox-less Vanderbilt Stadium for a year. Maybe longer. But that's not the end of this tale just yet. Mother Nature decided to make an appearance in April of 1998. That fantastic shrine being built just happened to be in the way of a tornado. A bit of damage to the structure and a few cranes collapsing, but nothing too calamitous to delay construction long term. Thus, it will lead to one of the few things the Oilers did right in years. They helped out with the city's cleanup efforts. It was a PR bonanza. Probably the first time that Nashvillians felt that Bud's team was trying to be a part of their city. It wasn't much, but it was at least a start. A few things still hampered Bud's efforts to convert the unwashed masses. Most importantly, the name of the team. A huge sticking point was that they were still called the Oilers. It didn't feel like their team. Where is the oil in Tennessee? Bud Adams wasn't their owner. He still lived in Houston, for God's sake. It still felt temporary. Perhaps they should have tried marketing the damn team to them the previous year. As the 1998 season progressed, they were still having trouble bringing fans through the turnstiles. The attendance figures were better than they were the last 2 years, but they were unable to sell out Vanderbilt Stadium most games. Nashvillians were still lukewarm towards their seemingly ungrateful and indignant hosts. To fix it, Bud Adams would have to do what he long refused to. He would be changing the name of the team. In November of 1998, a new identity was revealed. One that would characterize and embolden the attributes of Nashville and its people. The Athens of the South would get a name honoring Greek mythology. The Titans. What they are known as to this day, and will be for a while to come. It's funny because Bud nearly fucked this up too. He was about to call them the Pioneers.
Oh my
Regardless of that, Bud wanted to deliver
Pioneers.
one last fuck you to his old home. He would keep the Oilers name in history. The nickname would be retired by Paul Tagliabue, so no other team would be able to use it again. Once the new stadium was complete, let's just say things got a bit better for the Titans. Nashville would slowly embrace the team. It felt like it was finally theirs. Helping matters, the 1999 Titans were really goddamn good. The emergence of an elite offense led by Steve McNair and Eddie George. The freak Javon Curse terrorizing opposing quarterbacks. Even a few old faces from Team Turmoil were still around. Bud Adams would become a god in his new city. Just as he had hoped when his desires for a new stadium began 5 years earlier. A 13-3 season would only be the beginning. In the wildcard game against Buffalo, Nashville would have their connecting moment with their new team, the Music City Miracle. If you listen closely, you'll still hear people say it was a forward pass. They would ride this momentum to a Super Bowl, their first in franchise history. As for what happened that game, well, I'll save you the anguish of it. But what about Memphis? Scorned sister that openly rejected their temporary suitor? They would not get an NFL franchise. Only a few other short-lived football teams in the XFL and AAF that were given a tepid response. However, they would receive legitimacy in a professional sports franchise. It was in the NBA. In 2001, the Grizzlies would defect from Canada to Memphis, and Memphians were elated to at least have something that Nashville didn't. Now, if they stay there, considering their small market status and alleged financial turmoil, is up for debate, but it's at least a somewhat happy ending. Houston, the adversary of Bud Adams and vice versa, had their own issues to deal with in the Astros and Rockets. Both had demanded new stadiums, and both were on the verge of moving in the late 90s. But unlike with Bud Adams, those teams had political capital to work with, and were able to secure new stadiums for themselves. Adams did a victory lap after the fact, but no one gave a shit. Despite this, the allure of the pigskin was still very strong with the city, and they were able to secure an expansion franchise over Los Angeles for 2002. However, they would not be the Oilers, as Adams was a petty fuck, but the Texans. At least the perpetual turmoil stayed with that franchise, though. But that is another story entirely, one unfolding as I speak.
2nd and 7 for the Texans. Carr. Bradford! Touchdown!
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it, guys?
The St. Louis Rams were the kings of the NFL in 19.
That was really interesting. I think we might stop it here. I might do a little more on this some other day. I mean,
Say that the Oilers.
we got the Rams to talk about. You know, going down a rabbit hole like this is pretty cool, pretty interesting. But like I said, I'm going to probably get out of here now. I got to get to bed soon. But thanks for everybody that showed up. I will see you guys in a couple of days. I am out. Peace. Adios. See ya.